Hello and welcome to the Safety Artisan, where you'll find professional, pragmatic and impartial safety training resources. So, straight on to our session, and it is the 8th of February 2020, just to let you know. Now, we're going to talk today about preliminary hazard analysis, which is task 202 in Military Standard 882E, which is a system safety engineering standard. And it's very widely used, mostly on military equipment, but it does turn up elsewhere. So it's a wide interest to people. And 202 is the second of the analysis tasks, and it's one of the first things that you will do on a system safety program, and therefore one of the most important things. So, and this forms part of a series of lessons that I'm doing on Mil-Std-882E. So what are we going to cover in this session? Well, quite a lot. Purpose of the task description, recording and scope, how we do risk assessment against, it says tables 1, 2 and 3, but basically it's severity, likelihood and the overall risk matrix, and we'll talk about all of those three. Risk mitigation and using the order of preference for risk mitigation, a little bit of contracting, and then a short commentary from myself. But in fact, I'll be providing commentary all the way through. So let's crack on. So the purpose of task 202, as it says, is to perform and document a preliminary hazard analysis, or PHA for short, to identify hazards, assess the initial risks, and identify potential mitigation measures. Okay, well, we're going to talk about all of that, so let's just crack on. So first of all, task description. There's quite a lot here. And as you can see, I've highlighted some stuff that I particularly want to talk about. So it says the contractor, but it doesn't really, whoever is doing the analysis, and actually the customer needs to do some 202 themselves. Otherwise, they won't really understand what they're doing. So whoever does it needs to perform and document a PHA, and it's about determining initial risk assessments, okay? So there's going to be more work, more detailed work done later on, but for now we're doing an initial risk assessment of identified hazards. And those hazards will be associated with the design or the functions that we're proposing to introduce. That's very important. We don't actually need a design to do this, okay? We can get in early when we have user requirements, functional requirements, that kind of thing. And doing this work will help us make better requirements for the system. So we need to evaluate those hazards for severity and probability, as it says, based on the best available data. And of course, early in a program, that's another big issue. We'll talk about that more later. It says including mishap data as or if accessible. American term mishap, it means accident, but we're avoiding any kind of, it might be an accidental mishap, or it might be sabotage, it might be, stupidity, deliberate, whatever. It's a mishap. It's an undesirable event. So we look for accessible data from similar systems, legacy systems, and other lessons learned. Okay, I've talked about that a little bit in task 201. We'll talk about that more today under commentary. So we need to look at provisions, alternatives, and these means design provisions and design alternatives in order to reduce risks, and mitigation measures to eliminate hazards if we can, or reduce associated risk. And we need to include all of that. So that's the task description. That's a really good overview of the task and what we're going to talk about. So first of all, recording and scope. As always with these tasks, we've got to document the results of the PHA in some kind of hazard tracking system. Now, a word on terminology, we might call this hazard tracking system, we might call it hazard log, we might call it a risk register, doesn't really matter what it's called. The key point is it's a tracking system. So it's not, it's a live document, as people say, you know, it's a spreadsheet or a database, something like that. It's something relatively easy to update and change. And so we can track changes through the safety program as we do more analysis, because things will change. So we should expect to get some results and to refine them and change them as time goes on. Very important point. Okay, scope. Big section this. In fact, let me just check. Yes, we've got three slides on scope, so this does go on and on a bit. So the scope of the PHA is to consider potential contribution from a lot of different areas. So we might be considering the whole system or a subsystem, depending on how complex the thing is we're dealing with. And we're going to consider mishaps, so, you know, accidents and incidents, near misses, whatever might occur from components of the system, energy sources, ordnance, well, that's, you know, bullets and explosives to you and me, rockets and that kind of stuff, hazardous materials, interfaces and controls, interface considerations to other systems, external systems. Maybe you've got a network of different systems talking to each other. Sometimes that's called a system of systems architecture. Don't worry about the definitions. Our system probably interacts and talks to other systems, or it relies on other systems in some way, or other systems rely on it. So there are external interfaces, that's the point. So we might think about